$6.4 trillion just disappeared in 48 hours, and the American people are angry. The stock market is crashing, but somehow Trump insists that everything's just fine. So the big question is, what's really going on with the American economy? In just 2 days, the U.S. stock market saw a staggering loss of $6.4 trillion, all triggered by Donald Trump's new tariff policies. Major indexes like the Dow Jones and S&P 500 plunged, sending the entire market into a state of shock. This collapse isn't just hurting big investors, it's hitting everyday Americans hard, especially those relying on pensions and 401k savings. As stock prices tumbled, millions watched their life savings shrink in real time. Families are now asking, will we still be able to retire? Is our future safe anymore? Worse still, this crash has shaken public confidence in the financial system itself. The American economy, once seen as the strongest in the world, now looks vulnerable, all because of a string of bad political and economic decisions. While the economy is collapsing, Donald Trump continues to defend his tariff policies from a golf course. He posted this message: "Only the weak lose," a reckless statement at a time when the economy is in complete chaos. As American families struggle under a trade war and soaring prices, Trump is out playing golf at a $54 million tournament funded by Saudi money. To many, it feels like he's putting personal interests above the country, completely ignoring the pain millions are going through. His policies, corporate stock buybacks and massive tax cuts for the rich, failed to stop the downturn. Instead, the lack of real solutions has only made Americans more anxious about where this economy is headed. Major U.S. companies like Apple, Tesla, Qualcomm, and Whirlpool are taking a massive hit from Trump's tariff policies. These corporations, heavily dependent on international markets, especially China, are now facing a brutal 34% tax on American exports. And it's not just big business that's hurting. Small businesses and consumers across the country are feeling the pain too. Prices are surging, from groceries to cars to everyday essentials. Families are struggling to keep up, and more people can't even afford their basic needs. Even Warren Buffett, a longtime friend of Trump, has stepped in and publicly dismissed Trump's tax claims. Buffett made it clear these policies won't help the economy in the long run. They'll only punish working families and honest businesses. The economic crisis, fueled by Trump's failed decisions, has sparked outrage across the country. Protests have erupted in major cities like Washington, D.C. and New York, with powerful messages. Trump is destroying America. People are no longer staying silent, not when their jobs, their savings, and their future are being destroyed by political chaos. On social media, the backlash is explosive. Twitter and Facebook are flooded with criticism as more Americans turn their backs on Trump. Hashtags like #TrumpIsDestroyingAmerica and #ResistTrump are trending nationwide. Trump has put his tariffs all over the place. I've been trying to understand them. I don't like them. It's more a trade deficit tariff, to me, like, hey? So this is the meanness of Donald Trump. He's gone down to every minuscule country in the world, even countries that have no people. Okay, a wave of frustration and betrayal. People are comparing this moment to the worst economic downturns in U.S. history, and they're asking the question out loud. Can Trump really be trusted to fix the economy he helped break? With the economy in freefall and millions of Americans suffering, the question is becoming impossible to ignore. Does Trump truly understand that his own decisions are pushing the economy toward disaster? His tariff policies haven't just hurt big business. They've made life more expensive for every American family. And now voters are starting to wonder, can he even change course? Does he have what it takes to fix this before it's too late? Don't look away, because what's coming next might just make you rethink everything you thought you knew. One night, 1,000 points lost. Trump calls out Liberation Day, but then delivers a tax blow, pushing the U.S. economy into the abyss. Who are the victims of this war? It's you, the American people. That's right. No one is safe. From the EU, Canada, Australia, the UK, to even remote islands with no inhabitants like the Penguin Islands. All were included in Trump's tariff list. What Trump calls Liberation Day isn't a day to celebrate freedom, but the beginning of a global tariff war. And just one night later, the U.S. futures market dropped by 1,000 points. Claiming that other countries are unfairly imposing high tariffs on U.S. goods, Trump created a tax formula that shocked the world. How? He took the U.S. trade deficit with a country, then divided it by that country's export volume, and arbitrarily assigned that number as the tariff rate. For example, Indonesia has a trade deficit with the U.S. of $17.9 billion, and Trump declared that Indonesia is imposing a 64% tariff on U.S. goods. But in reality, there's no such high tariff. So who will pay the price for this trade war? It's the American people, the very ones Trump claimed would benefit from these measures. However, in reality, it's the U.S. consumers and businesses who will bear the heaviest burden. Today's decision will add to uncertainty in the global economy, and it will push up costs for American households. It is the American people who will pay the biggest price for these unjustified tariffs. U.S. consumers will have to pay more for imported products, from food to electronics, directly affecting their standard of living. President of the European Commission Ursula von der Leyen spoke out, and because of this collective experience of the last, almost 75 years, so many Europeans feel utterly disheartened by the announcement from the United States. Let me be clear, Europe did not start this confrontation. We think it is wrong. But my message to you today is that we have everything we need to protect our people and our prosperity. Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also strongly condemned Trump's actions, stating that the unilateral action that the Trump administration has taken today against every nation in the world does not come as a surprise for Australia. These tariffs are not unexpected, but let me be clear, they are totally unwarranted. The administration's tariffs have no basis in logic, and they go against the basis of our two nations' partnership. This is not the act of a friend. As for Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, he asserted, "So we're in a situation where there's going to be an impact on the U.S. economy, which will build with time. In our judgment, it will be negative on the U.S. economy. That will have an impact on us, but the series of measures will directly affect millions of Canadians. We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures." Professor Scott Lucas couldn't hold back his criticism. "I think that was the dumbest, most economically illiterate speech I have heard in my life. Modeling the impact of this trade war shows a terrible result. The average tariff in the U.S. will peak at 29%, the highest level since the Great Depression of the 1930s. The total estimated damage will reach $1.4 trillion USD for the global economy, while U.S. citizens will bear an indirect tax burden of up to $6 trillion US. Even conservatives can't stomach this." Former Australian Prime Minister John Howard did not hesitate to criticize Trump, stating, "I agree with tariffs on economic grounds. I made up my mind about the stupidity of tariffs 15, 20 years ago. They do not protect local jobs. All they do is increase local prices. And, I think the attitude that President Trump has taken towards some great allies of Americans in the past is really blameworthy." As for Republican Senator Rand Paul, he voiced a warning. Tariffs have also led to political decimation. When McKinley most famously put tariffs on in 1890, they lost 50% of their seats in the next election. When Hoover put on their tariff in the early 1930s, they lost the House and the Senate for 60 years. So they're not only bad economically, they're bad politically. The U.S. economy is collapsing like a vertical skyscraper. But don't worry, Fox News has the perfect solution. Just pretend nothing is happening and trust that everything will fix itself. Let's see how they turn disaster into a 5-star meal. Ah yes, Fox News, always ready to defend economic catastrophe with a smile. Laura Ingraham kicked things off by boldly claiming, "America wasn't founded on free trade, contrary to what you've heard, even from some senators today." Wait, what? No one told us America was actually built like a flea market. But hey, if not free trade, then what was it built on? Burgers and whiskey? Then she gets deep, saying people can't be happy working 2 or 3 jobs and still being broke. Well, sure, but what is happiness anyway? Apparently, it's expensive SUVs, luxury beach trips, and dinners at 5-star restaurants. Only catch is, you've got to work nonstop just to afford one meal there. Janine Pirro, the woman whose 401k never sweats, delivering. And you know what? I don't really care about my 401k today. You know what? Well, of course not. If your bank account looks like a zip code, who would care? But if you're a regular person struggling to pay bills, this kind of comment feels like a slap to the face. Then she goes, "'Cause I am, but this is what I believe. I believe in this man, and I believe that what we're seeing now with his bringing in $1 trillion in business and manufacturing and companies moving back to the United States. In the middle of the stock market vanishing over 500 points. Kevin Hassett says, Isn't there? There's nothing crazy about this policy. In fact, this is a policy that was tried and was effective in the United States for 150 years. Seriously, if you're watching your hard-earned savings disappear, exciting is not the word you'd use to describe that feeling, is it? Well, if you're Hassett, I guess you'd find it. Thrilling to watch your money melt away by the minute. But for most people, this excitement probably feels more like curiously wondering if you'll survive until tomorrow. But hey, Hassett manages to make all this chaos seem like a fun adventure, and so we sit back, relax, and enjoy the sudden change. In fact, some suggest it's a day of ruination. Today, betting markets are suggesting we have about a 50% odds of a recession. This is a revolutionary bet. Well, Kane talks about the economic collapse like it's some kind of grand wager. Sure, revolution doesn't really mean diamonds and gold. It's more like a groundbreaking economic policy that's causing the whole world to sway. So instead of worrying about the state of the economy, Kane sees this as a historic bet. But here's the real question. Who's really betting here? Is it the big corporations who stand to profit, or is it the everyday people, the ones watching the economy crash while still scrambling to survive day by day? Howard Lutnick, a Wall Street billionaire and Trump ally, claims the market collapse is just another normal day for him. Oh wow, just another normal day, huh? For us, the ones who don't benefit from the economy's free fall, can we really call this a normal day? If Lutnick's sticking with this view, maybe we should rename it from the worst day in U.S. stock market history to just another Tuesday. For people like Lutnick, nothing is ever truly bad, but for the rest of us, it's a never-ending nightmare. Trump's economic advisor made another strange claim about the golden age Trump is supposedly bringing to America. But the reality? None of us are feeling this golden age, with prices soaring, high-interest loans, and job security still hanging by a thread. So is this golden age really a promise, or just another marketing gimmick from those in power? No matter how hard Fox News tries to spin or deflect, the truth is the market lost over 1,500 points, and that's one of the worst days in U.S. financial history. We can smile and pretend nothing's wrong, but this collapse isn't just going to disappear. So why can't the people at Fox News face the truth? Will they keep blaming outside factors while the economy crumbles under the administration's watch? U.S. stocks are tumbling for the second day. The Dow is already down 1,000 points after dropping almost 1,700 points. Trump's tariff policies are pushing the people into a tough spot. Are you ready to face the consequences of this? U.S. stocks are plunging not just for one day, but for 2 straight days. In the last 48 hours, the Dow Jones has lost over 1,700 points. Big companies once used to trading aggressively with international partners are now facing a market that is no longer as easy as before. Giants like Apple, Qualcomm, and Tesla couldn't escape this shock as China announces a 34% tariff on U.S. goods worth up to $143 billion a year. China has hit back today, announcing an extra 34% tax on all American goods being sold there. They've accused the U.S. of bullying and endangering the global trade order, and in the last few minutes, Donald Trump has accused China of panicking in their response. Then there's the rout on the markets right after Trump announced a 25% tariff on $200 billion worth of Chinese goods. Beijing did not back down. Immediately, China retaliates with a 34% tariff on U.S. goods, especially agricultural products like soybeans, corn, and processed foods. This is a hard blow to the U.S. agriculture industry, especially as farmers are already struggling with the broader economic challenges. So what does this mean for the U.S. economy? According to the U.S. International Trade Commission, these new tariffs could cause the U.S. GDP to drop by 0.5% and directly impact 500,000 jobs in industries that rely on exports. On top of that, U.S. consumers will face higher prices for goods, especially food and tech products. For the past 80 years, trade between the European Union and the United States has created millions of jobs. Consumers across the Atlantic have benefited from reduced prices. Businesses have benefited from huge opportunities, leading to unprecedented growth and prosperity. Reaching for tariffs as your first and last tool will not fix it. This is why, from the outset, we have always been ready to negotiate with the United States. Europe is gearing up for a big showdown with the U.S., as Trump's tariff policies are driving up the cost of many imported goods from these countries. The European Union, EU, might begin retaliating with tariffs on U.S. goods, especially tech and agricultural products. Countries like France, Germany, and the UK are considering importing more from China, which could make China an even bigger trade partner for the EU. In fact, China has ramped up exports to Europe in 2023, with Chinese products, particularly electronics and steel, becoming more attractive with lower tariffs than U.S. goods.
Sure, taxing other countries might bring in a large amount of money for the U.S. government, but in the long run, the American people will have to face higher prices. At the end of the day, the tariffs don't really make sense, making it so that things are more expensive for American consumers. And then, you know what will happen in all likelihood? It'll be harder for American exporters to export because of retaliatory tariffs. What we're looking at is a shrinking economy and higher prices. The answer might not be clear right now, but the uncertainty in the current trade policies will be one of the most crucial factors affecting investors, businesses, and consumers in the years to come. At the same time, the global market will continue to adjust, seeking a balance between tariffs and free trade. Remember, even though we may be in the middle of a trade war, the biggest impact will come from government decisions and changes in national policies, and in the end, it will be the people who bear the heaviest cost. A 25% tariff on all cars that are not made in the United States. If they're made in the United States, there's absolutely no tariff. Trump imposes car tariffs. American cars soar in price. Car prices are skyrocketing. A $48,000 car could now jump to $60,000. While American consumers face the pain of rising prices, workers are left jobless, and meanwhile, China is laughing behind the scenes. Ford F-150, the American car symbol, is no longer true. Let's start with the Ford F-150, one of the best-selling cars and a symbol of American cars. But did you know even this vehicle is not completely made in the US? Although the Ford F-150 is assembled in the US, it contains up to 30,000 parts produced in more than 24 different countries. For example, alternators from Mexico, wheels from South Korea, drive shafts from Canada. These parts are all subject to 25% tariffs due to Trump's policies. With key components coming from abroad, this tariff will cause unexpected consequences for U.S. automakers. Car price increase, significant cost rise. Automakers in the U.S. are now facing higher tariffs, leading to increased car production costs. Just the import tariffs on parts from Canada and Mexico could raise the price of a vehicle by around $3,000 per car. Additionally, tariffs on parts imported from other countries, such as wheels from South Korea, will cause the price to rise by another $3,000 to $6,000. On top of that, tariffs on steel and aluminum, essential materials, will add an additional $400 to $600. As a result, a car priced at $48,000 could increase to $60,000, which will definitely force consumers to pay higher prices for every car they purchase. Business is coming back to the United States so that they don't have to pay tariffs. And will tariffs bring factories back to the U.S.? Trump's goal is to force automakers to move production back to the U.S., creating more jobs for Americans. However, the reality is quite different. Instead of creating jobs for workers, companies may choose to automate production to reduce costs. Shifting entire production to the U.S. is not an easy task. One study shows that if automakers want to move the entire supply chain back to the U.S., it could take years and cost billions of dollars, not to mention the risks of lower quality and delayed production timelines. The U.S. auto industry stands in turmoil. The U.S. automotive industry had built a strong supply chain system based on cooperation and free trade with countries like Mexico and Canada. However, with the new tariff policies, Trump has disrupted this foundation, causing chaos in production and logistics. These changes not only disrupt the supply chain but also increase production costs, putting automakers under significant pressure regarding pricing. Instead of focusing on advancing technology and producing new cars, automakers now have to focus on debating whether to import parts from Mexico or Canada, or if they can find alternative domestic sources. These debates prevent them from concentrating on innovation, which is essential to maintaining global competitiveness. China outpaces the fast win over the slow. While the US is struggling with its tariff policies, China has quickly developed and is now becoming the world's largest car exporter. This has made industry experts reconsider America's strategy. An automotive expert once said, "It's not the strong swallowing the weak, but the fast beating the slow, and right now, America is falling behind." China has begun to dominate the global car market, while the US is still caught in debates over tariffs and chaos in the supply chain. Will the US maintain its leadership in the automotive industry, or will it be overtaken by competitors like China? Liberation Day. What did Trump just do to cause the US market to lose $1 trillion? Liberation Day, a name that sounds like a Hollywood blockbuster, but in reality, it's the day the US market goes up in flames under Donald Trump's hands. Why is this happening? Donald Trump announced a minimum 10% tariff on all imported goods into the US, calling it a strategic move to restore trade fairness and end exploitation for imported cars. The tariff skyrocketed to 25% immediately. The financial world was shaken. He called it Liberation Day, but the market immediately went into panic. Dow futures lost over 1,000 points, S&P 500 dropped 3.7%, Nasdaq plunged nearly 5%. CNBC called it the worst shock since COVID. The name, Liberation, was left only on paper. In a less than 10-minute speech at the White House, Trump didn't just highlight the issue of cheating, he threw in confusing examples, like plastic eggs at Easter, to describe subpar goods. He declared a 10% tariff on all imported goods, stating each country would be taxed based on what they charge us. China was the first row. China, 67%, that's tariffs charged to the USA, including currency manipulation and trade barriers. Instead of providing clarity, the speech left investors even more bewildered. While the president spoke of growth charts, the market saw a dramatic downward plunge. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. Inflation is going up. As you pointed out, what's happening is that the stock market is collapsing. Barron's didn't hesitate to call it a move that sabotages the world's economic engine. The real consequences aren't found on the Nasdaq floor, they're in the pockets of the American people. Inflation is creeping up, and consumer prices from food and fuel to electronics are surging across the board. Meanwhile, retirement funds and investment accounts lost billions in a single trading session. According to initial calculations from the Tax Policy Institute, a middle-class family could face an additional $3,800 per year. Representative Hakeem Jeffries called it a day of full-blown recession, not a liberation day. He pointed out that Trump promised costs would go down, but now everything is headed in the opposite direction. One of the most controversial statements was when Trump declared that America should return to the 18th century tariff system. You know, the United States in 1870 to 1913, all tariffs, and that was the richest period in the history of. But what's often overlooked is the context. Back then was completely different. The US didn't have a central bank, no heavy industry, no global trade or modern supply chains. The current economy cannot function on a mindset from 200 years ago. Applying outdated models to today's hyper-connected financial world could lead to uncontrollable chain reactions. Trump openly criticized Canada, America's top trading partner, calling it a freeloader on the US. He pointed out that products like milk, beef, and cheese were facing unfair tariffs, and the US needed to retaliate. But Canada's response was swift and strong. People started a massive boycott of American goods. The hashtag boycott USA trended worldwide, and Canadian businesses canceled orders from US companies. Experts are warning that the $800 billion trade relationship between the US and Canada is now severely fractured. A unilateral move could cost the US one of its closest trade allies. The economic impact isn't just hitting the markets, it's bleeding into politics. In states that were once Trump strongholds, like Iowa, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, recent elections have shown a clear shift. Iowa saw an unexpected victory for an opposition candidate with a margin of 25 points. Pennsylvania witnessed an unprecedented flip in a district that hadn't seen an opposition representative in over 100 years. And in Wisconsin, the battleground state, the electorate has clearly turned against the tariff policies. This shows that people are sending a message with their votes. Economics is no longer just a theory, it's a reality they feel every day. The final question isn't what happened, it's why. Some experts argue that this is the result of a familiar management style: push everything into crisis, then restructure from the rubble. Trump has filed for bankruptcy multiple times, and now he may be repeating the same strategy with the nation's economy. Some believe this is an accidental move, but many warn, in every crisis, there are always those who profit. Perhaps the most concerning thing isn't that the market is crashing, but that the very person causing it is losing control of himself. Don't take your eyes off this, because there's much more to come. Powerful blow from China. $22 billion loss and the future of U.S. trade. In March 2025, China canceled 1.88 million tons of soybeans from the U.S., causing a $22 billion loss. With 13% of global trade in its hands, is this just a disruption or a larger strategy? China canceled 16 soybean contracts, a message from Beijing. When China decided to cancel 16 major contracts, they not only reduced export numbers but also sent a clear message: we can hurt you without using weapons. A simple move, yet it could have a global shockwave. This action weakens the U.S. economy and disrupts the global supply chain, as China can replace the U.S. with other suppliers. Missouri farmers, $1.1 billion loss. The impact of this decision isn't just reflected in the numbers. Farmers in Missouri who invested in soybean exports will face losses of up to $1.1 billion in 2025. This is not only a blow to the economy, but also a significant shift in the trade dynamics between the two nations. These farmers not only lose an important partner, but also face long-term disruptions in the export market. When contracts are cancelled, it's not just the farmers who are affected, but also processing plants and related businesses. Targeting 42,000 acres, striking at important land. This move isn't just about trade contracts, but it also concerns assets. China once owned 42,000 acres of land through WH Group, the parent company of Smithfield Foods. The cancellation of these contracts makes that land a crucial strategic target. China is signaling, "We don't just trade, we can control your land." This could spark a wave of concern about the control of agricultural resources by major nations, affecting future political and economic decisions. Trade shift: U.S. losing edge, Brazil gaining market share.